Hi there. Thank you for being here. What you're about to hear isn't just a story. It's a journey through grief, anger, and ultimately, healing. Today, I want to share something deeply personal, something that took me years to understand. The title says it all. Forgiveness isn't for them, It's for you. If you've ever held on to pain, if resentment has ever kept you awake at night, then this story might feel a little too familiar. But I promise, there's light at the end of it. So let's begin. The weight began imperceptibly, a feather at first. I barely noticed it, attributing it to a restless night, a particularly stressful day at work, or simply the natural ebb and flow of life's anxieties. But the feather remained, and soon it was joined by another, and another, until a heavy cloak of resentment settled upon my shoulders, its darkness permeating every facet of my existence. It wasn't just resentment. It was a deep, festering wound, a refusal to forgive that poisoned my well-being and locked me in a prison of my own making. I was suffering, intensely and constantly, and the cruel irony was that the key to my freedom was clutched tightly in my own hand, the key of forgiveness. It all started, well, where do these things ever truly start? Perhaps in the hazy, half-remembered landscape of childhood, with perceived slights and unintentional wounds inflicted by those who were supposed to protect me. Or perhaps it began later, in the turbulent years of adolescence, when the world seemed to conspire to shatter my idealistic notions and leave me vulnerable and exposed. But the defining moment, the earthquake that fractured my spirit and set me on this path of self-inflicted suffering, occurred on a seemingly ordinary Tuesday afternoon. I was 23, full of youthful optimism and boundless energy. I had just landed my dream job as a junior architect at a prestigious firm. My relationship with my college sweetheart, Sarah, was blossoming, and I felt like I was finally on the cusp of achieving everything I had ever hoped for. That afternoon, I received a phone call. It was Sarah's mother. Her voice was strained, barely a whisper. "There's been an accident," she said, the words hanging in the air like shards of glass. "Sarah, she's gone." A drunk driver. A senseless act of negligence. A life extinguished in an instant. The world as I knew it dissolved around me, leaving me adrift in a sea of grief and unimaginable pain. But grief, as terrible as it was not the only emotion that consumed me. Beneath the surface of my sorrow, a burning rage began to simmer, directed at the man who had taken Sarah from me, at the justice system that seemed inadequate in its response, and ultimately at the world itself for allowing such a tragedy to occur. I attended the trial, my heart a leaden weight in my chest. I saw him, the man responsible, sitting across the courtroom, his face a mask of remorse and regret. But his remorse meant nothing to me. His regret could not bring Sarah back. All I felt was a searing hatred, a desire for vengeance that threatened to consume me whole. He received a lenient sentence, a slap on the wrist in my eyes. It was an outrage. The injustice of it all fueled my anger, hardening my heart and solidifying my resolve to never forgive him. In the years that followed, I became consumed by my resentment. I obsessed over the details of the accident, replaying the events in my mind endlessly, searching for some way to undo what had happened, to rewrite history. I became withdrawn and isolated, pushing away friends and family who tried to offer comfort and support. My career stalled, my passion for architecture extinguished by the darkness that had taken root within me. I was a shell of my former self, a prisoner of my own grief and anger. I tried therapy, but I couldn't bring myself to truly open up. I saw the therapist as an adversary, someone who was trying to take away my anger, my only connection to Sarah. I clung to my resentment as if it were a life raft, afraid that if I let go, I would lose her completely. The therapist suggested forgiveness, but the word felt like a betrayal. How could I forgive the man who had destroyed my life? How could I forgive the universe for its cruelty? My physical health began to suffer as well. I developed chronic headaches, my sleep became erratic, and I experienced frequent bouts of anxiety and depression. My doctor attributed it to stress, but I knew it was more than that. It was the weight of my unforgiveness, the poison that was slowly corroding my body and mind. I was slowly killing myself, all in the name of holding on to my pain. One day, while visiting Sarah's grave, I had an epiphany. As I stood there, staring at the cold gray stone, I realized that my resentment wasn't hurting the man who had killed her. It wasn't affecting Sarah, who was beyond the reach of my anger. The only person it was hurting was me. I was the one who was suffering, the one who was trapped in this cycle of pain and resentment. And I was the only one who could break free. The realization didn't magically erase my pain or make forgiveness easy. It was a long and arduous process, a journey of self-discovery and healing. I started by acknowledging my anger and allowing myself to feel it fully, without judgment or shame. I wrote letters to Sarah, expressing my love and my grief, telling her everything I had been unable to say in person. I also wrote a letter to the man who had killed her, not to forgive him, but to release my anger and to let him know the extent of the pain he had caused. I returned to therapy, this time with a willingness to be open and honest. I worked with my therapist to process my trauma, to understand the root of my resentment, and to develop coping mechanisms for managing my anger. I learned about the importance of self-compassion, of treating myself with the same kindness and understanding that I would offer to a friend in need. I started practicing mindfulness and meditation, techniques that helped me to calm my mind and to connect with my inner self. Slowly, gradually, the weight on my shoulders began to lighten. The darkness that had enveloped me began to dissipate, replaced by a glimmer of hope and a sense of peace. I started taking better care of myself, eating healthy foods, exercising regularly, and getting enough sleep. I reconnected with friends and family, and I started pursuing my passions again. I even began to date, cautiously at first, but with an open heart. Forgiveness didn't happen overnight. It was a process of letting go, of accepting the past, and of choosing to move forward. It wasn't about condoning the man's actions or forgetting the pain he had caused. It was about releasing myself from the prison of my resentment, of freeing myself to live a full and meaningful life. It was about choosing health over bitterness, healing over hatred. One day, years later, I was walking through the park when I saw him, the man who had killed Sarah. He was sitting on a bench, feeding the pigeons, his face etched with lines of regret and sorrow. I hesitated for a moment, my heart pounding in my chest. I could have turned around, walked away, and pretended I hadn't seen him. But something inside me told me that I needed to face him, to confront my past, and to finally put this chapter of my life to rest. I walked over to the bench and sat down beside him. He looked up, his eyes widening in recognition. He opened his mouth to speak, but I raised my hand to stop him. "I know who you are," I said, my voice calm and steady. "And I know what you did." He lowered his head, his shoulders slumping with shame. "I don't expect you to understand," I continued, "but I want you to know that I forgive you." He looked up at me, his eyes filled with tears. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice choked with emotion. "Thank you." I stood up and walked away, leaving him sitting on the bench, surrounded by the pigeons. As I walked, I felt a profound sense of peace wash over me. The weight on my shoulders was gone, completely and utterly gone. I was free. That day, I understood that forgiveness wasn't about the other person. It was about me. It was about reclaiming my life, my health, and my happiness. It was about choosing to live rather than to suffer. It was about realizing that the only person who could truly heal my wounds was myself. The journey wasn't easy. There were setbacks and stumbles along the way, but I persevered, driven by the knowledge that my health, my well-being, depended on it. I learned that forgiveness is not a single act, but a continuous process, a daily choice to let go of resentment and to embrace compassion. And now, years later, I can honestly say that I am grateful for the experience. It taught me valuable lessons about the power of forgiveness, the importance of self-care, and the resilience of the human spirit. It transformed me from a victim into a survivor, from a prisoner of my own grief into a beacon of hope. It showed me that even in the darkest of times, healing is possible, and that forgiveness is the key to unlocking a life of health, happiness, and peace. My journey to wellness through forgiveness didn't end with that encounter in the park. It continued, evolving and deepening with each passing year. I became an advocate for forgiveness, sharing my story with others and encouraging them to embark on their own healing journeys. I volunteered at a local support group for victims of trauma, offering guidance and support to those who were struggling with grief, anger, and resentment. I even started writing, pouring my experiences and insights into articles and blog posts, hoping to reach a wider audience and to inspire others to choose forgiveness. One of the most profound lessons I learned was that forgiveness is not always about absolving the perpetrator. Sometimes it's about forgiving ourselves. For the longest time, I blamed myself for Sarah's death. I tortured myself with what-ifs, wondering if I could have prevented the accident, if I could have somehow changed the course of events. I carried a heavy burden of guilt, convinced that I was somehow responsible for her fate. It took years of therapy and self-reflection to realize that I was not to blame. The accident was not my fault. I was a victim, just like Sarah. And just like her, I deserved to be treated with compassion and understanding. Forgiving myself was a crucial step in my healing process, allowing me to release the guilt and shame that had been weighing me down for so long. It was about accepting my limitations, acknowledging my humanity, and recognizing that I had done the best I could with what I knew at the time. Another important realization was that forgiveness is not a sign of weakness. On the contrary, it is a testament to strength. It takes courage to confront our pain, to acknowledge our vulnerability, and to choose to let go of resentment. It is much easier to hold on to anger, to nurse our grudges, and to remain trapped in the past. But forgiveness requires us to rise above our emotions, to embrace empathy, and to choose love over hate. It is a powerful act of self-liberation, freeing us from the chains of our own bitterness and allowing us to move forward with hope and resilience. I also learned that forgiveness is not a one-time event. It is a continuous process, a daily choice to let go of resentment and to embrace compassion. There will be times when the pain resurfaces, when the anger flares up, and when the temptation to revert to old patterns of behavior is overwhelming. But in those moments, it is important to remember the progress we have made, the healing we have achieved, and the peace we have found. We must remind ourselves that we have the power to choose our response, to choose forgiveness over resentment, and to choose love over hate. We must be patient with ourselves, allowing ourselves to feel our emotions without judgment, and trusting that we will eventually find our way back to a place of peace and acceptance. As I continued to share my story, I encountered countless individuals who were struggling with the same issues I had faced. I met people who had been betrayed by loved ones, abused by authority figures, and victimized by senseless acts of violence. I saw the pain in their eyes, the anger in their hearts, and the weight of unforgiveness on their shoulders. And I knew that I could help them, that I could offer them a glimmer of hope and a path towards healing. I started organizing workshops and retreats, creating safe spaces for people to explore their emotions, to share their stories, and to learn about the power of forgiveness. I taught them techniques for managing their anger, for processing their trauma, and for cultivating self-compassion. I guided them through exercises that helped them to identify the root of their resentment, to understand the impact it was having on their lives, and to develop strategies for letting go. One of the most effective exercises was the empty chair technique, where participants were asked to imagine the person they needed to forgive sitting in an empty chair and to express their feelings to them. This allowed them to release their anger, to communicate their needs, and to gain a new perspective on the situation. It was often an emotional and cathartic experience, leading to profound breakthroughs and lasting healing. I also emphasized the importance of self-care, encouraging participants to prioritize their physical, emotional, and spiritual well-being. I taught them about the benefits of healthy eating, regular exercise, mindfulness meditation, and spending time in nature. I encouraged them to connect with their passions, to pursue their dreams, and to surround themselves with supportive and loving people. Over time, I witnessed remarkable transformations in the lives of the people I worked with. I saw them release their anger, forgive their perpetrators, and reclaim their lives. I saw them heal from their trauma, overcome their obstacles, and achieve their goals. I saw them transform from victims into survivors, from prisoners of their past into architects of their future. And I knew that I was making a difference, that I was helping to create a world where forgiveness was the norm, not the exception. My journey to wellness through forgiveness has been a long and challenging one, but it has also been the most rewarding experience of my life. It has taught me invaluable lessons about the power of compassion, the importance of self-care, and the resilience of the human spirit. It has transformed me from a victim into a survivor, from a prisoner of my own grief into a beacon of hope. And it has shown me that even in the darkest of times, healing is possible, and that forgiveness is the key to unlocking a life of health, happiness, and peace. And that, I believe, is a message worth sharing with the world. The journey continues, of course. Forgiveness isn't a destination, but a lifelong practice. There are still moments when the old wounds ache, when the memories resurface, when the anger threatens to consume me. But now, I have the tools and the wisdom to navigate those challenges. I know how to soothe my pain, how to manage my anger, and how to choose forgiveness over resentment. I know that I am strong, that I am resilient, and that I am capable of healing anything that life throws my way. And so I continue to walk this path, sharing my story, offering my support, and inspiring others to embark on their own journeys of forgiveness. I believe that forgiveness is not just a personal choice, but a collective responsibility. We all have the power to heal the world, one act of forgiveness at a time. And together, we can create a future where compassion, understanding, and peace prevail. A future where no one has to suffer because they couldn't forgive. Thank you for listening. Truly thank you for staying with me through this journey. If my story resonated with something inside you, if you've been holding on to pain, anger, or guilt, please remember this. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean excusing what happened. It means choosing freedom over bitterness. It means choosing to heal one small, brave step at a time. If this story moved you, I invite you to reflect. Maybe write a letter you'll never send. Maybe speak your truth in a safe space. Maybe, just maybe, forgive yourself. You deserve peace. You deserve to heal. You deserve a life not ruled by the pain of the past. And if this message touched your heart, don't keep it to yourself. Share it. Someone out there might be waiting for the sign that it's time to begin. Again. Until next time, take care of your heart and keep choosing healing.